Coming up. Let's do it. I want you to get excited about your life.
Here we go.
Dr. Phil rose to fame in the late 1990s and eventually secured his own show in 2002, which now rakes in millions upon millions of dollars. His show is based on a tough love approach.
I'm waiting for somebody here to get real.
He approaches his guests as though their issues can mostly be solved with just a little bit of common sense, and to be quite frank, if it was that easy to solve your problems, especially in terms of mental health, well, then the field of psychology would be rather obsolete. Most of his guests and his topics are chosen based on shock value, and for a daytime TV show, that actually makes perfect sense. I mean, everyone in the circuit is guilty of parading around some of the most shocking people you will ever see and choosing subject matter that's the talk show equivalent of clickbait, and that's fine. I mean, if that's your cup of tea, then there's no judgment here, but if it's not, then you can always change the channel, right? While most other talk shows are seen as entertainment only, and despite the few hiccups that have happened along the way, it's pretty common knowledge that these things aren't to be taken too seriously. So what makes Dr. Phil different? Well, much like Dr. Oz and other medical professionals who offer a service to a wide audience via television or even the internet, just having the word doctor in front of your name grabs the attention of the people that they are addressing and gives their words and opinions that much more levity in the public eye. I mean, no one would think twice about the medical opinion of Phillip McGraw, local hardware store owner, but Dr. Phil, world-renowned psychologist? Well, that's an entirely different story. But having certification or credentials, it doesn't make you infallible, and in fact, it only lends weight to the amount of damage that you're capable of doing with just one wrong opinion. If you've been watching my channel for a while, then you know that I have a lot of opinions about a lot of different things. You may also know that I'm open about the fact that I suffer from chronic mental health issues and that my particular diagnosis is extremely stigmatized, so I take the issue of mental health and the stigma surrounding it very seriously. Dr. Phil hits a very particular sour note with me, and today I'd like to discuss exactly why I feel that this so-called doctor is actually a menace to the mental health community, and he hurts the very people he claims to want to help. As I said, Dr. Phil began his television career in the late 1990s, appearing on The Oprah Winfrey Show to offer advice and suggestions to guests, as well as the audience. He was well-liked, and eventually his show was picked up in September of 2002, debuting as a forum for guests to receive counseling and advice in a talk show format. The show tackles subject matter such as parenting, out-of-control teenagers, and even domestic violence. During his career as a television host, he's claimed to help thousands of people tackle some of the hardest issues they have or will ever face in their lives. And from the outside, that seems pretty noble, to be honest. But there are a lot of issues with the doctor himself, ranging from his no-nonsense attitude, insensitive handling of deep and traumatic topics, and even his very lack of credentials. This may come as a shock to some of you, but Dr. Phil is not actually a licensed therapist. Back in 2018, Dr. Phil was asked to speak to Britney Spears after her now infamous meltdown while she was being kept at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center for observation. The appearance was an attempt to convince Britney and her family to participate in an intervention-style episode for his show, which thankfully never happened. I mean, come on, the poor girl had been through enough if you ask me, so I'm happy that her issues were not televised any more than they already had been following the head shaving incident. Immediately after the meeting, Dr. Phil released a series of statements to the media discussing Britney's current condition, which the family was rightfully not happy about, and accused Dr. Phil publicly of making an already bad situation worse.
Even in just making that statement, it would have been appropriate had he been given the authority to do so, and he just hadn't.
Later that same year, a producer on his show traveled to Polk County, Florida to begin interviewing a group of girls about a potential episode. Earlier that year, a group of teenage girls had kidnapped and beat a cheerleader who they attended school with. The attack was filmed by the group and posted online, and the girls were rightfully arrested for their crimes. The episode, however, was scrapped when it came to light that the producer in charge of securing the interview in fact offered up part of the bail money for Mercedes Nichols, the accused ringleader of the attack. His excuse was that the show regularly offered to compensate guests' wages or to help with bills in exchange for appearing on the show, but posting bail seemed to take it a bit too far. The production assistant responsible is stated to have been in trouble for his actions, although it isn't clear exactly what that means. And considering the teen was facing felony charges for witness tampering when the show's team decided to post her bail, I would certainly hope that the consequences were nothing less than termination for his actions. Was it a crime for Dr. Phil to speak publicly about Britney Spears' medical condition? No. Was it a crime for his production assistant to post bail for a known criminal? Also, somehow, no. But there are huge ethics violations in both of these cases that, while not exactly punishable by a court of law, they should still factor heavily in the credibility of a show that claims to be a safe space for people when in fact it is anything but. Mental illness is not a sideshow. And yet the Dr. Phil show routinely treats its guests as though they are mere pieces of entertainment. The show is well known for editing guest statements to make them appear more shocking, and there have even been a few defamation lawsuits against the show's creator for this very reason. Unfortunately, they have mostly been dismissed as the judges involved seem to think that these actions are protected under the guise of free speech, and so they are free to do whatever is necessary to bring in the ratings. Unfortunately, this can be seen most evidently in the case of Shelley Duvall. Shelley Duvall is one of my favorite actresses. I loved the Popeye movie growing up, and as a kid I thought she was beautiful and I wanted to grow up to be like her. So when I heard she was going to be featured on the show, I was actually pretty excited. This was before I knew that she was having severe mental health issues, and I had thought that maybe she was going to speak about Robin Williams' death, as they were very close and she admired him and the friendship that they had together. But I was shocked when I found out that this wasn't the case at all. The promo that was aired to spotlight her appearance was exploitive at best. It showed the worst of her disorder and symptoms, and while the status of her exact diagnosis is unknown, it's easy to see that this is a woman who is in desperate need of help, and the show did nothing to help her. They brought in a woman who was in the midst of what appears to be psychosis, showed her off for a nation to see, and then dumped her at a care facility where she refused to take any medication and returned home 3 days later. So not only did he not help her, he paraded her out for the world to see like a sideshow, and for what? For ratings? He could have just left her alone. He could have offered her help in private, or even coordinated better with her family to give her access to proper long-term care, but he didn't do that. He didn't do that at all. This woman was a movie star in her time. She left an impression on the people she met, and she starred in some of the biggest movies that came out during her career. And that's generally how people remember her, as the bright-eyed, buck-toothed beauty who starred alongside Jack Nicholson and Robin Williams and produced a series of amazing children's shows before retiring to live her life in private and peace. I know that I'm ranting a little bit, and I'm sorry, but I feel so strongly that there were so many ways he could have reached out and helped her. Instead, he pulled her back into the limelight, filmed her at her worst, put it on the air for the whole world to see, and then dumped her off to be someone else's problem. It seems to me that there's no limit to how far he's willing to go to debase his guests just for his show. And if that wasn't bad enough, then take a look at the episode featuring former Survivor winner Todd Herzog. His mother contacted the show after he began suffering problems with alcohol addiction. In this clip, it's evident that Tom is extremely inebriated and he even needs to be held up as he's escorted onto the stage to continue filming.
Sorry.
Sorry. Brandon, why don't you get over there and take Debbie's spot?
Keep in mind that this is an accusation and the studio has denied any and all rumors, and Todd is perhaps one of the only people who truly knows what happened behind the scenes. But what we do see is a clearly intoxicated man who is crying, unable to walk or even sit in a chair on his own, and likely should have received medical attention rather than to be put on display for national television. Shelley Duvall has since gone back into the shadows, and according to her family, she is in treatment now and doing much better. And Todd has publicly thanked the Dr. Phil show for its help in giving him access to rehabilitation therapy, which, as he said, has turned his life around. In an interview with USA Today, Todd had this to say about his appearance on the show. "I'm grateful in a lot of ways for the show, for getting me help in the nicest places in the country. That's a gift right there. There are some things about the show that I don't like, and that I don't think are real. I should have been in the hospital, in that sense. There should not be liters of vodka in my dressing room." Dr. Phil does routinely provide access to care facilities, therapies, and treatments for his guests. There's probably a lot of resources that I don't know about, as that for information is particularly hard to find, but I found references for 2 main facilities that he likes to collaborate with for care: the Turnabout Ranch and the Provo Canyon School, both of which are based in the state of Utah. Turnabout Ranch is billed as being a place for young people with self-esteem issues, depression, and anxiety to go and receive treatment. The ranch is a working horse ranch where the kids are supposedly given therapy and hands-on work to help them with their issues and give them a sense of purpose. From the outside, it looks great, and the Dr. Phil show regularly refers his younger guests to the ranch to work on their issues after filming of the show. However, in 2005, 15-year-old Elizabeth Varney was sent there to work on issues of depression and self-harm, and during her 80-day stay, Elizabeth claims she was subjected to torture, animal abuse, and that the treatment by her therapist at the ranch caused her to suffer from further issues, including fear that if she misbehaved after returning to her home in the UK, she would be kidnapped and returned to the camp. In 2012, Elizabeth and her mother filed a lawsuit against the ranch, and according to the 34-page complaint, during her stay, Elizabeth was subjected to sleep deprivation, denied food, and yet forced to eat and prepare meat, which was abhorrent to her as a vegetarian. The ranch threatened her with restraint and force-feeding with a tube if she did not comply. The ranch forced physical labor and excessive exercise in extreme temperatures. It forced her to regularly put her hands in a sink filled with bleach to wash dishes until they bled, leaving to this day scars on her knuckles. She also claims that her therapist regularly accused her of faking her depression and that her acts of self-harm were mere manipulation on her part. And when she did report mistreatment and bullying in the camp, she was told that the abuse was her fault and that she deserved the treatment that she got. She further claims that she tried to tell her parents about what was happening, but her letters were confiscated and her parents only became aware of the deterioration of her mental and physical condition when they visited her, only to find that she was withdrawn. She had lost a substantial amount of weight and her hands were raw and bleeding from the bleach. And she's not the only one. Reddit is filled with stories from teenagers who have stayed at the ranch, all detailing the same instances of abuse and neglect at the hands of the ranch owners. And most of them have one frightening accusation in common. When they asked to leave, go home, or even send for their parents, the kids were denied or even held at the ranch longer than their initial stay was said to be. The accusations of holding kids against their will came to light in 2016 when a teenage boy attacked and killed a worker before assaulting another and stealing her car to make his way out of the camp and toward a nearby city. He was caught by local police when he was spotted driving erratically toward Escalante, Utah. The teenager was reported to have been sent to the ranch for addiction issues, which the ranch denies offering any kind of help for. Another teenager on Reddit claims that they too were sent to the ranch at the age of 16 for fentanyl addiction, which they were not provided medical treatment for during withdrawal. According to this user's account of the incident, he was present for the 2016 murder, where he states that the young boy involved was also detoxing and not in a good state of mental health, and that 2 days before the incident, he had attempted to drink bleach and still no medical help was provided. Second on the list is the Provo Canyon School. It is a psychiatric youth residential facility also situated in Utah that has seen a whole slew of lawsuits through the 80s and 90s for physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. Of the most notable cases are heiress Paris Hilton and Kat Von D, who both attended silent protests against the school with other teenagers just this year, actually. According to Wikipedia, in September of 2020, Paris Hilton premiered her YouTube Originals documentary, This is Paris, in which she attributes her chronic insomnia to the PTSD she developed when she spent 11 months at Provo Canyon School in the late 1990s.
The last school that I went to was Proco Canyon School. And that was the worst of the worst. There's no getting out of there. You're sitting on a chair, staring at a wall all day long, getting yelled at or hit. I felt like a lot of the people who work there got off on torturing children and seeing them naked. They would prescribe everyone all these pills. I didn't know what they were giving me. I would just feel so tired and numb. Some people in that place were just gone. Like, the lights are on, no one's home. A lot of people were on suicide watch. And I was so scared that was gonna happen to me. So eventually, I found out a way to not take the pills. But everyone would tell on everyone, and they found a Kleenex with all of the pills in it. And I got in so much trouble for that. Solitary confinement. Like something out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They'd make people take their clothes off and go in there like for 20 hours. Felt like I was going crazy. Someone was in the other room that was like in a straitjacket, screaming. I was just freezing, I was starving, I was alone, I was scared.
The Dr. Phil show is, to put it lightly, a flaming hot mess. People reach out to the show in an attempt to get help, to find healing for themselves and their loved ones, or to share their stories with the world, and that, in and of itself, is an incredibly hard thing to do. Asking for help when you know you're not well can seem like an impossible task, especially when you take into account how stigmatized mental health is and just how the mere mention of having a disorder can cause people to treat you very, very differently. I'm very open about the fact that I myself suffer from mental health issues, and I know firsthand how it feels to know you need help, but not know how to get it. I know the desperation of trying your hardest only to feel like it's never enough, and to have people judge you harshly for suffering with things that they themselves do not and could not understand. So I applaud anyone and everyone who is willing to reach out for help. But it is horrifying to me that a person like Dr. Phil, who should know full well how hard it is to seek treatment, and how much some of these people end up suffering before they finally reach out and ask for help, and uses that desperation as a way to boost his ratings and line his pockets. Phillip McGraw may hold a piece of paper that says he passed the course and earned his credentials, but his false sense of morality and skewed ethics show that he isn't actually a doctor, he just plays one on TV. In 2006, Dr. Phil invited Ty Beeson, the creator of the exploitive internet show Bum Fights, onto his show to discuss his career. Now, while the whole concept of Ty's show is absolutely abhorrent and I won't go any further into detail about it, I do think that Ty said it best when he confronted Dr. Phil before being kicked off the show.
If you think I exploit people, every time you bring a guest on this show, you exploit them and spread whatever problems they have to the whole world. You think that's helping them?
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. You can go.
You know what? Who do you think you are, huh?